Thank you everybody for coming. It's good to see new faces. I'm excited. This is a small group. It's been really small and intimate during all of the workshops, but very productive. So thank you for coming and attending. This is the final third workshop out of the 3 workshop series. So today we're going to go back to a little bit review of the first 2 workshops that Mahana has gone over, and then complete our assessment that hopefully everybody came with, so we can get some kind of a plan for next steps and what we really need to be aware of in engaging the community and how we're going to go about doing that. So for right now, I'm going to turn it over to Mahana, and she's going to help us work through the assessment, and then after, I will go through and lay out the options and different scenarios that the Puako community can choose from in moving forward with the on-site treatment recommendation. This is going to be an overview of those options and scenarios. What we have discussed, Mahana and I, is that this will basically lay a really good foundation for future workshops. So there will be more workshops after this that is going to go in more detail of the actual process for each option, depending on what the community would like to dive into. So ask questions like we have been along the way. Raise your hand. Feel free to interrupt if things are not making too much sense. And those that are online can send online questions in, and we can answer them live as they come in. So for right now, here is Mahana Gomes.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming back. Reef for 3, I love it. Okay, so as Erica said, we're going to stick to our 3-hour time allotment today, but we've got a lot that's going to come out of that. Louder, thank you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of blow through the review really quick this morning. And then we're going to dive right into the assessment. So did everybody bring your assessments with you?
Yes.
Okay, great, great, great. So just a quick recap. Today is the last of a 3-series workshop. And the first part was roles and responsibilities of an owner and or operator of a wastewater treatment facility. Part 2 was effective operations and maintenance of wastewater treatment facility. In those, we did a real bird's eye view of roles and responsibilities, capacity development, if that all rings about. I'm going to use those same terms again today just for us to get comfortable with that and how they all relate to effectively managing your utility. Today, like Erica mentioned, we're really going to dive in, and it's specific to Puako. So we're going to look at putting the stakeholder names together. We're going to start with assessing what you folks think your community has as far as capacity goes. And then we're going to roll into the options we've been kicking around for about the last year or so. And we're going to attach names to that based on the different categories and areas we covered. All right. So we have Robbie walking in. Awesome. Welcome. Come on in. Okay, so again, we're just reviewing 1 and 2, then we're doing the assessment, identifying the stakeholders of Puako, and review potential options for ownership, operations, and maintenance. We're going to try to do all of that today in 3 hours if we can. Like Erica said, we can do a bunch more if we need. We'll just go with what the community wants to do. So a few reminders, just to kind of tie back. So when we're talking about a wastewater treatment facility, we basically are, no matter who or what the name is, EPA primacy is always involved. That's the reminder. They're the regulatory. Then you have your owner, your operator, and customers. We can add layers, we can add entities, and that's what we'll do this after or later this morning, I guess, for Puako. But this is the core that goes with any utility on the wastewater side. Another reminder. We really covered in part 1 the roles and responsibilities of an owner versus an operator and jointly. And so in that, whenever you're running a utility, EPA has come up with these 3 categories of compliance per se. And so we covered regulatory compliance, communication, and system security. As long as you can dump capacity into these 3 areas, which is very big, we saw that you're on the right track to effectively managing your utility. Then we talked about capacity, which as you develop capacity, you're trying to develop it in financial, manager, and technical. In these 3 areas, you tie back to the previous 3 we just talked about, and collectively, hopefully, you've got a really nice run wastewater treatment facility or water system, whatever that might be. We also dove into part 2, those 3 areas, or 3 areas in effective management, the 10 keys that you should have good capacity within. And of those 10, we specifically pulled out 5 for Puako. And these were the 5. We looked at product quality, infrastructure stability, stakeholder understanding and support, operational optimization, and financial viability. And from that, you folks went home with some homework, which was this assessment document. And so, are there any questions before I dive into this? Again, I just blew through that review, but okay, we're good. So what we're going to do now is we are going to plot what you've all done. And I've got several colors here, and what I'm going to ask is if you'll actually, this helps me, because I can't remember which color. I'm going to have you just pull it. And this will be your color. Okay, so what we're about to do, we already went over what these are, and as I start to plot your results, we'll touch a little bit on each of these items to remind everyone what we were rating ourselves on. How this works is this matrix here. The first thing you rated was your achievement, what you think your current capacity is with all of this, what you currently are doing to maybe meet some of this. That's what we did first in this first column. The second column was priority, and that's where you were stating how high of a priority you thought this would be. Should it be a low priority, a high priority? What we're going to do now is actually plot that. First off, we're going to see where everyone's mindsets are with regard to Puako, current capacity and priority going forward. Then we're actually going to talk through it. So this process might take an hour. We're going to talk through if there are severe differences. We're going to talk through them. If a lot of you line up with things, we'll still talk through it, but we'll try to find the core of why everyone thought the same way with that. And so it's really interesting, and I hope you'll bear with me as we do it. But it's fun and it's nice to see. So I'm going to maybe start with, who wants to start? Anybody? Okay, so I'll take your color. And what I'm going to do is I just use the acronym, and that's all I've got in the area that we're going to use. And so what you'll tell me is PQ will be low, high, or whatever you've got, and then I'll just put it in.
Okay, so I understand correctly. You've got 2 bullets there.
Yep.
So the first one asks, our community has resources to assist with understanding permit requirements and other regulatory. So we have the resources, so I would say the answer that would be high.
For your achievement, okay. Okay, and your priority?
And the priority would be high, because that's definitely have that under your belt and understand here you can't run a plant. So
okay.
I would think high.
Okay, good.
And now the next bullet is the same, and it's not a part of it. Our community understands and agrees on expectations. I would think it's the same.
Oh, I see. Okay, so whatever you ended up with, we'll cover the 2.
Okay, that's what I did.
Okay, perfect. So is this right then? Is that where you ended? Okay. And then what? So how do you folks want to do it? Do you want to do each color to the same one, or just have you give me all of yours, and then we'll go all of yours? We can do it either way.
together.
We'll do it all together. That's fine. I've done it both ways. So we can talk through it. You guys want to just stick to PQ? Is that what you want? Yeah. Okay. And so we'll. That's okay. We've done it both ways. It's however the communication goes is fine. Okay. Maybe we'll close that door if that's okay. Okay. Yep.
I agree with Sarah. I think we have the resources, that's fine. But on our community understanding police, I'd say that's me.
It's priority. It's the priority. It's another question.
So you're saying achievement still. You're still talking achievement. Okay, so you pick. You want it at high or medium? Which one would you say for achievement?
Those two comments have to be one.
Yep.
I'd say medium.
Medium. Okay. Medium. And then your priority?
I'd say as far as having the community to understand all this,
Sure.
that's high.
And as far as having resources, continuing to have resources to understand permitting.
We have the resources, that's high.
So priority, the priority for that is high as well. Okay, okay. So we're gonna go medium, high. And if I start to plot it in the wrong place, catch me, okay? I get confused after a while.
There are no wrong
Yeah.
I'm pretty much right there with George. I asked the same thing. I'll go with medium. You say my profile. Yeah.
Medium, high?
Right.
Okay.
Is it towards the
Yeah, so if we're still on for achievement. Okay.
Yeah.
So achievement is medium and high priority. Yeah. Okay.
So I have for rate achievement as high. Yep. Okay.
You have it as high.
And then I have rate priority as medium.
Okay. High, medium. Okay, so I think that's it, right?
Sure. I put medium high.
Medium, high. Okay. So the good news is that majority of you are thinking the same, that you've got resources available currently to meet the requirements, so basically permitting requirements and other regulations. And you also feel that that should be a high priority. Is there any discussion you guys want to have? What resources do you guys think you have? Maybe we should just share some of that. That made you think you have it.
Well, you have the EPA, the Department of Health. You can always look up kind of permitting requirements. And then we have organizations that we go to contact.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Okay, so the next one was financial viability, and basically the two bullets that feed into this is our community has an understanding of rates as they pertain to adequate operations and maintenance, and our community has discussed rate requirements with our potential customers, board members, and to other key stakeholders. And a resource for this, and I listed it intentionally, was a feasibility study because it gave you a lot of talking points to numbers if you wanted. So we'll start with you.
So I'll put low as the
Achievement.
achievement,
Okay.
and I put high as the priority.
Okay.
So the priority is actually getting the getting this information to interested community. Or is it interested? I mean, to make it eventually.
Right, it's basically to meet and maintain these two other items, and that's exactly right. To have the community on board and talk to them about your rates, what you're talking about, their understanding.
Libraries are out of low cost.
Okay.
We can just keep that up there and let the color. Yeah. I wrote it down on the thing.
Me too. Okay. You guys remember that was okay. You had to prescribe here. I'm like, wait, got more. Okay,
I'm just saying.
great.
Thank you.
Okay. Erica?
I have medium high.
Oh, thank you. Sherry?
I was thinking between low and medium.
Pick which
So if I were to think about the entire community, I would think low.
low high? So, just to understand this matrix, I don't normally say right up front, but this is really good. What's happening is whatever ends up in this red box, as part of this packet that we gave you guys, remember there was a improvement plan and then an improvement worksheet? Sometimes this whole process can get really overwhelming and convoluted. So the intent of this is to help you identify where you think you might want to start. It doesn't mean that you have to, but the goal of this, and we could do it today, we may have to do it in another workshop because of time, is that we actually take what falls in here, or any of these that are colored, and help you document what might need to happen. So exactly like what we were just talking about, maybe the first step for FV is trying to come up with a process to reach out to the community. We've done many. I've been there for many, trying to get them to come to meetings and hear what the costs are, but maybe really figuring out how to actually start doing that and start achieving that. So that's the purpose of this, really. We don't have to do it today. I don't know if we have time for it, but that's what those other two sheets were. So that when you left us, you weren't just going to you actually have something jotted down for you to try to pursue. And if that doesn't work, you come back to the board again and figure out what else we can do. So I am saying that early on because this is really awesome. Sometimes we don't see this right off the bat, that everybody's consistent in the process. Okay, so the next one we have was operational optimization. So this one, remember, was talking about utilizing our energy and our resources to the best that we can, our power costs, our pumping costs. And so what we attach to that is our community understands, has documented key operations of the proposed treatment facility. Our community has resources available to assess proposed energy use, resource use, and loss. We need to talk about that one, or did that one make sense after last discussion? Make sense? Okay. So that's right.
Medium.
Okay. Medium. So in your mind, you guys have some resources available towards this somewhere. I do agree. I guess there's no right or wrong. The documented key operations, I think, is a PER. That's a big bonus you've got already. You've got a PER already done. Doesn't mean it be exactly what you do, but it's in place with some of this information.
I guess I was thinking we have the availability to go out and get the information.
Okay, that's good. Okay. Okay.
No,
No medium.
Right, yeah, I've got low. I don't think everybody in that community understands, and I don't think they understand the resources.
And then priority-wise, it may not be something that's of urgency right now for them to understand. But
No, that's part of the process. That's part of the learning curve. You can learn all that stuff if we can get everybody to watch these 3 videos, then they understand. I don't think they understand, like, when we came here. So this is a good thing, is we can show them, go to that and go through these websites and look at these, what we've gone through here. It's an educational process. It's nothing more than that. But I just don't think they know, like me, I had a good idea, but it wasn't even close. Of what was involved in this whole thing and understanding.
Sure.
And but I'm still 100%. I'm probably more excited about the project now than I was before, just because I
That's good.
yeah.
Oh, it is warm. I'm sorry.
So now I'm like, turn on a bit. I'm sorry. Kind of.
Okay, so just to sort of articulate what I'm seeing is that right now, as far as priority goes, it still seems as though on your priority list, if we had to attack each one of these 5, this guy so far is coming out behind. Meaning, if we were to do a plan, we'd really be looking right now at FV as of right now, and how we're going to chip at that versus the OO. Everybody, as far as priority goes, not achievement, but just priority. We all on the same page. Okay, great. Okay, Bobby. Okay. Lolo. Erica.
For operational optimization.
Yep.
Medium.
And Cherie?
I put low medium.
Okay, so let's talk about this just a little bit. Though they're pretty close, what's happening now is that there is almost like a split, where 2 of you are feeling possibly. The good news is that everybody's feeling we're not at high achievement with the old. That's the good news. Everybody's at least on that page. Some are feeling not really, and some are feeling, oh, maybe we got some resources or some capacity already in place. But the interesting thing is some feel that this is a low priority. So if we were doing a plan, we wouldn't even write anything towards this. Some feel that it should be addressed by falling into these boxes. So
I just have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing some comments, and I just want to see what this actually means. So I am looking at it more from what resources we have and what resources that we can provide. I guess I am not so much looking at it as a community as a whole, understanding these, but just as what resources we can provide to help them understand. And then the priority, I'm more looking at it then from that angle of, okay, so how much of this does the community actually know? So I might say, like if I go back to product quality, the achievement of having the resources and outlining that we want the effluent treated to an R1 standard and that we understand the permitting requirements and regulatory needs. So from my perspective, because I'm so deep into it, I'm like, oh, we have that all outlined. But I put on the ranking, medium, because we still, I feel, need to relay that to the whole community. So am I doing that correctly?
So that's a good point. Thank you. That's my fault, actually. I should have been better at that in the beginning. So the first half of what you said, with the achievement, the way we set this when we were doing it is actually your current capacity, current resources. So not the community's understanding of it, but your understanding of what you have already to achieve this. So even if 80% of the community doesn't know this, but you know that you've got certain things in place that could actually achieve this right now or work towards achieving it, that's what you're ranking for achievement. The priority is this in itself, whatever these bullets are, how much of a priority is it for you to get that higher in achievement, whatever meets high in achievement, but and keep it there. Did I answer that better?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because you're right. Some of this. So the way I looked at this is, for this, I didn't jump in because just knowing the project, you don't have. This is a very high priority. The costs involved and all of that, and everything we've covered in the last two tie directly to that. So I did agree, and that's why I didn't really say. Although some of your perspectives were a little different. And thank you for pointing that out. The priority, I also agree, not that it really matters what I think because it's your project, but yes, in order to even move this forward, this is a big part of it. And addressing that before.
I look at it a different way than America. I was looking at achievement, fine for the five of us to understand it, and we're talking about a community. They don't at all, so I'm reading that low, and getting scores because I'm answering our community understands. Whereas I think the priority is how much more education we have to give to that community. So some are high, I think, 0, medium to low, because they don't have such other bigger issues put in front of the community for that. That's how I answer.
Okay, so
I'm looking at achievement as communities understanding, not just personal. I mean, because if you did personal understanding, we'd be high and
Maybe high at all.
high and all that. Because we've gone through the two classes.
okay, great. But if you did, there's nothing wrong with it. So the intent of this was to have your individual understanding. The hard part, to be very honest, is that those that are here have been informed. Those that are not here, if they had done this, it would have given us true results that 6 of you would have had very high, and the rest would have been way out there. So it is skewed because of our audience, but the intent was your knowledge and your understanding. And again, if more and more people participate in this, you would really see that it would be completely split. So it is hard, but that's what we wanted to see, because honestly, if this is the core group that's going to drive this forward, if the core group wasn't cohesive, that's already a starting point for us. And how do we make a core group solid? But aside from that,
Well, it's just the way the questions are asked. Our communities. You're asking our communities. You just said, ask us personally. You could have done it, but you're asking our community. So.
I am, but it's your perspective on it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you get those skewed things. I know. Yeah. Now that I know everything in here, I know all this stuff is high. I would rate it all.
Yeah,
high.
exactly.
But the community doesn't know that. They have no clue.
An example is our team just did this for our own, and so a lot of this, instead of saying our community, was our HWE team, and we all did it individually, but speaking towards our team. And so what ended up happening is majority of our team lined up in certain areas, but what was interesting is there were a couple we actually had to stop because they were at complete opposite ends of the spectrum. We were still rating our team, but it was my perspective of the team, Frank's perspective of the team, Curtis's, same with you. You're still rating your community, but it's your perspective of what's going on. And again, it is skewed because you all are aggressive, everything, and have been coming. But had we had, maybe, if I had you do this, for example, if you allow me, she may be very different because hasn't been here at the different meetings, doesn't have connection to a lot of the resources we have. So she might be low to everything and high priority or something. But because you guys are also cohesive, this is what we're seeing. I know it's confusing, but really, before we go forward, it's really got to be that. In your mind, if you didn't know anybody else that was out there, but you've been doing things, in your mind, you're saying that our community's got access to Coral Reef. Our community's got access to Puako. Our community's got access to all of this. We're doing it because we're meeting them. We're already there. not per se, I'm speaking for my community. I'm just speaking for me about what I think my community has.
Then the question should be, do you have the resources to assist with understanding? Do you understand that? But it should be directed to me, because once you put the word community in there, I'm thinking, well, I understand it, but I know 5 neighbors that have no clue. So that's how I think
That's what we look at.
And you're right. You're right. It's just if this audience could change, and I did steer it that way, then it gets really off because they could be looking at what they're looking at. See, again, because we don't have all of them in the room that don't know, that's where that would have been fleshed out. They would have been the ones saying that. We don't have nothing. We don't bring it because they don't know. That's where it would have come out. And yours would have offset that, and then we would have had the discussion saying, well, why do you think we do it? And then that's how you bring them on board. Unfortunately, we don't have that participation.
And this is normal.
This is very
There's always only going to be a small core group. You know, I don't think the rocket scientists,
Right.
so, and everything else is evolution. So, and that's what, you know, so you usually only have a cool group of people trying to understand what the picture is and trying to look at it. But again, it's what your perception is.
And then your individual contribution when you're done with this on how to address it. So because you know that there's Hawaii water or coral or anything else you know, when we move into outside of this, that's what you're going to put on paper. Is like, well, this is what we have. Now, how do we use that? Or how do we move forward to get it to higher achievement? So I agree, it doesn't, but again, because it's a small group and it's a group, it does seem that way, but if we change it to just yours.
So what do you want me to answer this?
Yeah.
As our community or as you? As me?
As you,
Okay.
but it's talked about. Then you.
Okay.
That's easier. So did we do all of OO already?
I think so.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So.
Hi. Medium. Okay. Anybody else want to change theirs?
Yeah, I would move mine over to medium.
Okay, so by doing that shift, what did you think?
So.
Okay. So now we're going to go to infrastructure stability. And this, our community has resources available and or understands the proposed system components and potential costs. Our community understands the need for a capital improvement replacement plan. Our community has resources or understands how to create and implement a plan. So again, this is your perspective of if you've got achievement of this at all in your.
I would say low and high.
Okay. Pink, yeah? Yes. Low and high. Okay. Do you want to share on that?
Well, you know, our community understands our need for a capital improvement replacement plan, has resources available, or understands the systems. There's a lot to this. There's a ton of stuff. I think we've only touched on small amounts.
Okay. That makes sense. We only had 2 workshops that touched a little bit on that. Again, the other thing we do have is the PER. just to point out, because that has a lot of what's proposed. Okay. George, I'm showing it. George was good.
I'm already, I'd go medium high.
Medium high. Oh, wrong, sorry, medium high. Medium. Yeah, medium high, I was right, correct? Medium high. Do you want to share?
Well, I agree with Sarah. I think that I understand a lot of what you're going on with the sure it's not that whole financial.
Okay.
numbers.
That behind
High, medium. You want to share on that?
well, we got the resources, you got everybody in here and all that stuff, we just, we need to talk this other stuff, that really in-depth stuff, it's about it, but I understand, I've got a great understanding. Enough to know, I don't want to do it.
Right? That's all you need to know. At least you know now, right?
I want to run this thing, I don't even want to run it.
Low, high. Okay. Do you want to share one?
Well, got very and then as far as the need for capital improvement, replacement, I can see that so that's why low on the two, high.
That makes sense. That does. And to be honest, a whole capital improvement plan, rate setting, that's a whole other, it could be a whole workshop. So we have a couple of them there. It's just a lot. And once you have that, then you can run it. Yeah, it's a big one. Okay, Sheree? Medium, high. Okay. Do you want to share?
I mean, it's hard for me because I did all of this looking at the community as a whole. So I'm just thinking about, again, this group and then the rest of it. That's how
This one is a little bit, I keep going between low and medium. I think that the PER does some components of this, but I think that achievement overall for these I feel is low, but I think the priority is really high.
Okay.
The only thing that would sway me to put it medium is the PER, but I don't think that the PER really goes deep into these three bullets. I think it kind of just skims them.
And truthfully, that's what a PER feasibility study is.
Right, right.
It's exactly, it's a bird's eye view, trying to give you a starting point of something. And with that, depending on the time of implementation, depending on how much time has gone by, you've got to deal with inflation costs, anyway. So you were low, high.
I'm low, high as well.
And the last one, and this, after I've heard all of you just now, what I wish that I had done is number 5, should have had 3 goals. So stakeholder understanding and support. Our community actively engages with local decision makers, community and regulatory representatives to build support for exposed resources and the value of this project. Our community performs and participates in active customer and stakeholder outreach and education. That second bullet might speak a little to everything I've heard from everybody just now, which is this is where the community is involved in. See, the other one, you're really talking about the specific in your thought, but we could almost add a third bullet here if you wanted to, and it would just be overall community participation. It could be that simple. But in the second bullet, if you want to qualify it, our community performs and participates in active customer and stakeholder outreach and education. We could mix that to really, it's up to you folks, because this one is yours. If you want to make this more about your community's involvement at this point, we can do that. If we want to go with what this is, specifically, this is again in your perspective, are in your community, are you guys achieving these things? Are you doing that in your perspective? Are you reaching out, like when Rebecca is doing things like that? But it could also flip this one to be, is there a majority of the community for that? Or we can add a third bullet. It's up to you if you want to do that, but this is where we really hit on it, because they are a key stakeholder. Am I making sense with that?
Well, then that would be low then. They're at low and then first priority is high.
High. And I want to point this out. This is just a plan to see as we're talking. And again, because this one was really for Puako. We've been to several meetings, and I want to say, if you kind of split your outreach and education, it's been impressive. The outside officials that you folks, whether it's Coral in your community, you folks, but the outside officials that you've reached out to already. You've had Rep. Evans participate, you've met with the branches, the wastewater branch at the state level, you've met at the county. So you've really reached out that way, in one perspective. But the other side of that is that in the community, the response has not been very good. So I don't know how we articulate that, but I do want to say that as we're talking about this, because this one I need maybe your help, how we use this. Because once we do this, we'll have to remember it, I'll have to note it for others that take it. How we define this, if not the results of this. Are we wanting to look at it that way and how you've reached out to outside stakeholders and not focusing on the community, or are we trying to wrap them all into one? Did I just
No, but if you look at my view on that is we agree. I myself, on the board meetings, we have reached out to everybody. We have the guys in there from we've had the cesspool, the Puako, and all the cesspool guys, everybody. We've had everybody march through there, give us a pitch trying to sell everything.
And you
buy everything, so we've got all that. The public has, I mean, the community has.
So maybe.
But that's a high thing, because I know all these. Yeah, I have done a lot. We've done a lot of outreach. I've been regulatory and talked to everybody and thrown everything at them we could possibly throw at them. We just don't have the answer.
You do, or what we could
I do. I think that it's fine. I think that it's fine the way that it is because of exactly what Peter is saying. I think that if you look at just these two bullets, so for example, what I have is that I think as a whole, the folks in this room, all of our partners, everybody, I would say this first bullet, the community actively engages with local decision makers. We're spot on with all of that. I think all of our partners are across the board. PSBA, Coral, White Water, like Mahana said, we've had Evans come out and support. We've had a lot of people support it. But the feedback we've received from the community has, it's not as high as we would like. We've gotten feedback from the community. It's definitely not as high. So for me, I kind of like split those two because I had high for the achievement for the first bullet, but then I had medium for the, or low for the second bullet. So I just stuck medium, and then I think it will always be important to do this. So I think the priority is just going to stay high through the whole entire project, to be totally honest.
As long as if everyone's okay with that, then we're going to just stick to this. That way, if anybody else wants to do this later, we're going to just keep that consistent. Okay, so let's, so we're doing SS. Okay.
So then I had medium high.
Great.
We do it that way.
Okay. Medium high.
And then high, we'll keep it on the improvement list.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, good.
Medium, very high.
He wants to start. No.
Well, and truthfully, what this is showing is that there's still room to improve. And in our minds, maybe part of that improvement is having more bodies thrown, having more response. Maybe that's a way to move to high. Maybe it's different types of publications. That's what's going to come into this improvements worksheet. What will make us move to high at some point? Peter?
Yeah, right in the medium high.
Medium high. Which one? High?
Oh,
Medium.
That's
Okay. Same for you? And this is easy. Okay. Cherie. And Erica?
I also have medium high.
Okay. So where are you time? Actually, so we do have some time that we can start this. I don't know it. You've got the whole packet, yeah? So what we'll do, excuse me, I've had a cough for the last 2 weeks. I don't know if it's an allergy, or right here, improvements worksheet. What we'll do, we have time to at least do one of them. Okay, so what would normally happen is if you look at that sheet that says improvements worksheet, we would pick the key management area that we wanted to focus on right now. And if you look at these questions, it's basically why was this management area ranked low achievement? What will constitute high achievement? What we're trying to do is brainstorm for you so that we cohesively come together. What are the causes of your achievement gap? What changes will the, and I should have changed that, instead of utility, but community need to make to improve performance? So these are the questions that when we pick one, we're collectively going to talk about, set our criteria, and then what happens is we move to an improvement action plan. Because in this brainstorming, we may already know what we need to do, but until we're able to lay it out and try to put pen to paper, we feel overwhelmed on how to take the step. So Erica, if it's okay with you, because it's 9:45, we can try one. So I'll leave it up to you. Basically, it looks like FV or IS are the real critical ones. So FV was the financial viability, IS was infrastructure stability. FV? Okay, great. So we have chosen financial viability for our key management area. Now, Erica, are you okay to take notes as I facilitate, or just basically, or if somebody wants to write down what you guys decide, because this is for you.
I'll take them.
Okay.
Do you want me to take them here? Okay.
You're fine there.
Okay.
It basically, what this is seriously going to be is a working tool that you can take out at any time. And it'll also be a guide if you want to start to do other ones as well. Okay, so basically, if we look at financial viability, why was this management area ranked low achievement? And what do you guys want to agree on? Because everybody had good reasons on why it was ranked low.
Well, we understand the dollar.
Okay, so not clear on the cost. What else?
Yeah. Sir, because I was led down this path. I looked at it and I found that was just an annual program operation. That's okay. So I just last night I was trying to borrow $10 million, and you borrow that at zero interest. And you amortize it for 20 years. It would be about $300 plus payments plus 140. So you're trying to sell it back. 4 or 5 bucks. It's true, but that's a big deal. So that's where I think you got to do this mindset.
Is that where somebody else comes in?
Well, no, she just, I mean, and I think it's That's what I figured, we have $10 million, zero interest.
So for the people online, I'm just going to try to summarize what Robbie just stated is that as he dove deeper into the PER numbers, there's still some uncertainty as to what's captured in that rate and the possibility. If he did some math the way he did it at 10 million with 0% interest over 20 years for them on the community, there was a higher figure than what's stated. And so again, the uncertainty of do we really have the costs allocated or even a good understanding. And so with that, I think it's fairly easy. For us, why it was ranked is there's so many unknowns and so many clarification things that need to come forth if you want to. We're not even talking about the communities yourselves. We're just talking about this core group that we have to live it for just you alone. The understanding of the numbers and what's involved in financial viability still needs to be brushed up on. Is that correct? So I guess we'll just put some unknowns, a lot of unknowns in the numbers is what they're coming to us for why it was ranked low. Yeah.
And can I just chime in just 1 second?
Sure.
I'm not going to add in too much because this is the feedback that I think is going to serve Coral very well for us to engage with you folks in the community. But I do just want to point out that the operation and maintenance breakdown and those monthly fees in the PER, that's consistent for all three of those options. That monthly fee is not taking into any account the capital cost. So even for connection to Monolani, installation of an ATU, building an on-site treatment facility for Puako, all of those, what's in the PER is just the operation and maintenance cost for all three of those. None of those take into consideration the capital cost.
I thought that the maintenance for individual units was much higher.
Correct.
You're saying
You mean for ATUs?
ATUs would be like 300.
Correct. So that's just the operation and maintenance. That's not
Right.
the actual capital to get it in the ground. Yeah.
So when you're saying that 134 includes across the board,
Yes.
I don't buy that.
No, I'm sorry. 134 was only for the on-site treatment facility. Each one had a different each one had a different operation and maintenance.
Okay.
So if I look, because this took me a while, Robbie, so that's why I just want to make sure that we're clear on what the PER actually breaks down. So each one of these, if you will, and you guys don't have it, so I can just pass this around after I explain it, but if you go back to the PER after you attend these workshops, and I'm sure that you're going to look at this document in a completely different way, because you're going to understand each of these components so much more. But if you look at these breakdowns for the capital is set aside in just, this is the total for the capital. When you look at the O&M breakdown for each of them, it basically is just stating the O&M for the operation and maintenance of them. So it's not going to take into this capital. So what you are looking at, Robbie, is it's $134 a month in operation and maintenance fees per lot for an on-site treatment facility. Per lot for ATUs, it was estimated that just the operation and maintenance cost was $300. For the Monolani connection, it would be $160. So their different operation and maintenance costs monthly are different, but none of them take into the capital cost of putting these technologies into the ground. Yeah, it's a great point, and it's a very important observation.
And may I ask this, when you say O&M, that O&M with the maintenance is purely maintenance, or is it
Operation.
replacement reserves?
Replacement reserves as well.
So it does include a capital improvement.
For I believe it's a 20, I believe you went out 20 years. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You went out 20 years for all operation and maintenance for the facility, for each option.
So the good news is you got a resource at the starting point for a capital improvement plan. If his numbers include that,
Yes.
you do have a starting point. The actual accuracy as you progress depending on where you go. But the capital cost is separate, is what.
And so the capital cost is where I feel that as a whole, we not only need to introduce and like discuss more with the community, but that capital plan, you know, all of that needs to be, that process needs to be laid out so that we can move forward with knowing. But before we got there, we also really need to understand where as a whole the community is lying with these options that we're going to put forward today.
I still can't do right here. Because $300 a month for 20 years for ATU, you could buy quite a few ATUs.
Well, people were telling me that if something breaks down, it's $1,000 to shop and then to come on the property and do something.
Oh, well, yeah, yeah, you're right. No, yeah, I got one of those bills.
He's like, actually, now that you bring that up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's to replace the pump that, yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, it was like $1,400. Yeah. Huh? Right. That's the finding that we have. Yeah. Okay. But you're right about that. It's the big out of the camp. I remember that. Christina's did this. Yeah.
But we talked about way back in September, I remember one of the first meetings we went to, you know, what are we going to get out of it? You know, what do you get, you know, what the R1, R2, R3, you know, so you were looking at the best option.
Right, because even going with the ATU, you don't get R1.
No.
Right.
We had a problem, we had a board meeting the other night, and I brought up the problem that we haven't had a great response as far as the surveys sent out with the 3 questions. One, assistant, do not want assistant, do want more information. And one of the points that was brought up was the community is not going to respond until you can say, here's how much it costs a month, plus capital improvements, plus the building the whole thing. What's it going to cost? What are we going to do? If we have that in a survey, you would get responses. And I said, because I brought up resending out the survey and begging people to respond. And they said, it's a waste of time. People want to know what the numbers are and what's the plan. And I said, well, it seems a little crazy. The 5 of us are going to decide the plan, but I guess that's the way it works.
Right.
And so until we get that, something specific we can say, I think the SS, we're not going to get the SS support.
When I want to say this is that for Frank and I, we really connected to coming to these trainings because time and time again, we see this in communities. In order for us to get to the point of this discussion, and I think you might agree now that you've come to these, we couldn't even have this discussion in detail.
Right.
And that's something we went back and forth on for a while. But you're right. 5 of you, 6 of you may drive this because it is just way too much for a lot of people to grab onto. But it also lets you know I'm willing to be in this for this long because you may not have more than 5 or 6 of you for the next 2 years. It takes that. So that's along with everything else, just seeing who's been committed to 3 workshops and how many more you're willing to be committed to. That's all part of being sustainable and setting this up. So I do commend you for that. And yeah, you're right. That's what they care about.
Right, that's what, yeah. I mean, it's once we get the numbers, it's an easier sell.
Yeah. And that's why one of those meetings, I know I'm getting a little off track, but when those numbers started coming out, that when meeting with the PR, I pulled Eric on the side and said, we really gotta, and she was like, we really gotta get this training going because now what's gonna happen is you're gonna be the one answering these questions. If you send those numbers out and you're the body doing that, we will support that, but you gotta understand that.
Well, yeah, I can start to answer a lot of those things. You know, people are going, why are we going with the Mahana? I go, well, look,
Yeah.
I go, Mahana, we got to pay for the pump that goes over to Mahana. And we have to have the same amount of management to do that as we do just about to have our own treatment plan. We gotta, so I mean.
So I think that one of the challenging things that we have been faced with is as Mahana was saying, with this rollout of capital and, what do we do with sharing this information and teaching the community about this information? This project and just doing this in a whole has really taught me what a web this project is and how one thing kind of plays off of another. So for financial and capital costs, we have done an extensive amount of research on setting up places we could go for capital, essentially. We've gotten it to a point that unless we know these answers and unless we know the answer to the option of how we want to move forward with the actual implementation of it, the capital is a little bit vague. Does that make sense? So depending on these options that we're going to present after this assessment, depending on what option or what scenario is most appealing to the community, it will impact the way we get financial funding for capital. And so I totally agree with you and your feedback on people just care about numbers and they need to know the number in order to show their support. We have heard that here from quite a few people, that are just saying, what's the breakdown? Give us a dollar amount that we can say, yes, we agree to, no, we don't agree to, we need to go to another option, because we just can't do it. In order to get to that place, one, we have to understand where the community was as a whole, just in moving forward with the recommendation. And two, we need to understand, okay, what does that mean now that we know which direction the community wants to go in? Where is the funding that goes along with that scenario? Because let's say we wanted to do, and I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but let's say we wanted to do the Chapter 32 that you had Peter come in and give a presentation to the PCA. That really limits the funding to a specific type of funding. So, no, well,
You get funding any place. Technically, like a company.
Right, we get some funding here, and then we can, and if we're short $2 million, we can go there and get it for $2 million.
You're right. You're right that you can get it still from multiple places, but it's still categorized under that scenario. So it will make more sense later. But I do want to say that part of the decision making for the capital, these decisions also have to be made in order to identify where that capital needs to come from, or even can come from. So
Just to elaborate a little bit, I think one of the goals that we're trying to achieve the whole, and one of the wires trying to achieve with you guys is that it's a lot more than just doing. And I think you're seeing that. What the public cares, what the community cares about is what the bottom line is. But there's a lot more involved overall. I think you greatly understand that now. We're trying to put this together. We're trying to build that. So we're trying to give you the background, a sound decision. So when you're at that point, you have a full understanding of the complexity of what you're trying to achieve. It's not just, you got a pile of money and we're going to go and it's done. There's a lot more than that. No, and that's what we're trying to do.
Right, we get that. I mean, I get that. We get the money, but I mean, it's who we want to run. The thing is, we got to figure out who we want to run this thing, because we know we don't want to do that. So, I mean, that's it. It's finding somebody to run this, to do it, and we do want to have our own plan, because we got to. Just speaking for me, is because to run that thing through to hook it up to the Mahana, we still have to pay some for the same guy, money to run that pump. We said thing breaks down, I mean, we're covering a guy to do it if he was running the whole plant, just about. I mean, he's got to have the same licenses and everything to run that pump as he does to run the thing. So, I mean, I understand the complexities behind it. I mean, that's. You did a great job with that. I understand, and who's liable, and we are liable to get the news to the public about what we have to do and all of that. So it's, I mean, I understand that. You understand that, right, Robbie?
Yeah, but I don't agree. I think going to the Mahana now is making a lot more sense, because they already have them. They know how to run them. They have all the pieces that we don't have to recreate. Very even here.
But that was one of the options was perhaps Guatemala would buy our plant at R1. Then we're back to our original goal, R1.
Right, that's what our original goal was, to have R1 instead of having them go and do the injection. We finally get those injection wells with all the houses that they're building over there now. It's, you know, there's and when we throw us on there, there's a larger chance that they'll go to those injection. The whole reason that we finally gets those things, and they got them anyway.
Aren't we jumping ahead? Aren't we going to cover this
Yeah.
later on?
We are, so we'll come back to this.
Okay.
Basically, what we're gonna do is just finish this, because the one thing that would help us is to know what is our next step in order to help with this thing. So, what will constitute high achievement in this management? Will it be a more in-depth understanding of the PER numbers? What was that? I'm sorry, when you were saying that.
Some alternatives, concrete alternatives, okay, to give people some decision.
So in order to constitute high achievement, one thing would be maybe it's a separate meeting just to pick apart the PER as an option. I don't know, I'm just trying to, because what's going to happen is, maybe we don't have to go that far yet. Let's just say better understanding of PER and better understanding of options and alternatives. Is that what you're saying? Because the PER has the 3 options.
Right.
Is that what?
But this is all dealing with costs, because our hurdle right now is to costs.
Yeah, so using the PER numbers with that. So the first thing is understanding those numbers and the options, and then being able to relate them.
We need to have more scenario options, a grant from here, possible buyout from there, individual people forking over for $134 a month.
Okay, I gotcha. Erica, is that making sense? And can you
Perfect,
capture that?
yeah, I got it.
Okay, great. So this one is easy. We can either pass it or what are the causes of your achievement gap? What do you think there was a gap?
Information.
Great.
Lack of information here?
Yes.
Specific information.
Specific.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or, let me just circle here, understanding of the specific application.
No, they haven't got information.
And you're speaking about the capital, or do you feel that same way with like the operation and maintenance?
Operation,
breakdown?
everything.
All of it. So more consistent on just understanding of the per and alternatives for scenarios of getting capital improvement costs. Okay. I just want to make sure I'm capturing it appropriately.
Okay, so what will the community need to change to make improvements towards this? What do you guys think will help?
Information.
Okay.
Coming up with those.
Well, right now, it's looking like we need a little more input in order for direction. So it's a circle.
Right.
Well, I think
sure.
before we go there, so actually though, for you in order for you to feel like you're at least achieving something to these unknowns, so that's why we just defined what it was, and it's the unknown of the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you feel would help to improve that? We're going to have to start doing that because if not, it gets very overwhelming. What you're saying is definitely something, but it may come in
In comparison to the numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, just straight out comparison with the numbers.
Okay.
Because everybody wants to see it. Give 1, 2, and 3, and the comparison, yeah. And what the money, the costs are.
I think once
That's the way you can make choices.
once you do that, exactly what you're saying is going to automatically flush out. They're either going to pick one or they're going to say, nope, don't like any
Right.
of them,
Yeah,
go
like-
find this.
yeah.
Or
So
go
you're
find
talking
that.
about an in-depth, why it's chosen $134 a month.
Yeah, the things like that. But presenting to them,
Yeah, each of you and hooking up to one, the 3 choices there. Just going with the in-depth numbers where it's at.
I need to go to the capital.
Right.
not yet.
No, I don't think, yeah.
And the thing is, this is a living, breathing thing. So we can come back to the CFD 10 times if we need to as we chip at it. Because if not, it just gets over.
We're just going to give operating costs.
So we'll find out the capital I mean,
I didn't even get the total cost package. You didn't even know it's gonna cost me $200 a month for the installation over operating. That's quite good. So I want some idea of a real number, that operating costs without capital improvements.
Right. So basically, they're all saying the same thing, a better understanding of what those numbers.
However, we're not going to expect the individual homeowners to pay a boring petition, are we? How can we get Yamasada or Kobayashi to sign on?
Well, that'll come later. I'm gonna start for right now, because that's a whole other area. You're right, that's a very valid point. But, if we do that, it'll make us go in a circle, because really, there's no easy answer. Really, what we gotta do is understand the numbers first, really what they need. Put that out to the community, get feedback, and then chip at it that way. Because the feedback you get will be exactly what you're saying, nothing you expect it to be. And then we take that out. Okay, who will need to be involved for these changes? Okay, so we're trying to understand these numbers better. Who needs to be involved? Yes. Okay.
and the engineer.
Justin, we're off for.
Yeah.
Anybody else? And you guys?
No, and then your financial source, resource. Who do you look at? The capital sources.
Have you guys gone out in US community or any other type of grant?
Yeah.
And then, how could we track the performance progress? So throwing out the benchmark, if we say today we'd like to have that first meeting to go with this number, or something by this date, that's the benchmark. So by this date, we still didn't meet, I'm just throwing out an example. We still didn't meet to have a presentation of the numbers. We didn't progress. So just setting up some benchmarks for you folks to use.
Yeah, so
I'm sorry, are we still who needs to be involved?
We're ready to know that. How could you track your progress with your performance?
Okay, can I take one step back really quickly, just because I want to ask a question for you guys. What would be the best way that you feel Coral to relay that information? So some of it, I'm hearing that you just want a chart of a very basic breakdown. This is maybe like on a one page, these are the options, and this is how O&M breaks down, capital breaks down, where it could come from. But then the last piece of information that was mentioned was the actual capital resources that have been investigated to date. Do you want the actual whole, like the compilation of all the resources as a document, or do you just want it in a nice, clean, one-page information? And the reason I'm asking is that we could do both, so that's why I'm asking, like, how much information do you think would be kind of the sweet spot of providing enough for people to make a decision, but not providing so much that it's becoming overwhelming?
Simpler and easiest. I mean,
Okay.
Smaller, the more concise. It's going to this.
Okay.
And then boom, 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 and then this is what
You
the capital
agree?
costs are going to be. And if you want, you can throw another sheet. These are all people we talked to about finance.
Okay.
So included in that would
Yeah,
be,
just throw it in the bottom. Just list the names. You don't have to tell them.
so we
Okay.
go
So
from
they know who we checking. They know who you talked to.
So it would be like soup to nuts. They would know from if there's a zero cost for hookup, zero cost for maintenance of the pumps to the or 134 is all inclusive breakdown.
Yeah, so I think that is stepping away from just the O&M and the capital that that's going into, and Frank or Mahana, please correct me, because I think you guys are going to know better. What Sarah is asking is that actual cost breakdown for connection, cost breakdown for pump installation, and those costs. Is that something that comes with the development of the rules and regulations for the plant, or is that something that we will have in advance?
I think that should be that's part of the capital development, actually.
Okay.
That kind of stuff. The O&M, basically, what's it going to cost per month to run this back? end, to save a little money at the end, so if something does go wrong, that we're going to keep it. So that's just, basic maintenance, operation, maintenance of the truck. It's installation of line, hookouts, all of that is capital.
How much is that pump that's sitting at my house gonna cost? Pump it out.
Yeah, that's.
Is that,
Okay, perfect.
you know?
So I think what I'm hearing a lot is that it would really be beneficial to actually just have a meeting focused specifically on the PER and what those breakdowns mean. Some of it I'm hearing is in the PER, a lot of it's not in the PER, and we need to provide. But I think that it may be a good starting point to see exactly what is in the PER and that we actually have already. So this really helps me.
Yeah, we need to do that, and sit down with the five of us or whatever.
Yeah.
All that, once we come up with that, and then we can come out and do that survey, and then you get the results you want from the survey. People will answer our numbers.
I agree. Thank you. Okay. I'm good.
Sorry, yeah.
Erica, potential funding sources,
Yes.
does that have an opportunity to reduce capital improvement costs or home operation costs? Are some of those funds we would get non-repayable? I mean, the grants would allow us to go ahead
We've looked.
and that would reduce costs overall?
Yeah, so we've looked for grants, we've looked for loans, we've engaged Rep. Evans with SRF funding, and that is a zero interest loan. So it is a loan, but it doesn't have the interest associated with it, which drastically takes that monthly fee down of not having to deal with the interest, but it still is a loan. So we've investigated all three, and we have examples of all three. The smallest, I guess, pool of options obviously are grants.
Right.
And it's been challenging working with folks to see if the community as a whole would qualify for grants.
But grants are a possibility.
Grants are definitely a possibility.
But let me clarify one thing.
Sorry.
When, and primarily for grants, they are not going to give you a grant for O&M. That is for general construction costs. Let's say they gave you a grant for $3 million. Let's say, well, I'm going to use $2 million of that for there and stick the other $1 million in the bank to offset the cost of operation.
But that would take us into capital.
It'll take you down on capital improvements, but you can't apply grants towards O&M. Like you stand running. Even a loan, I wouldn't recommend you take a loan to try to offset the O&M costs over the next 5 years. So that O&M cost is a separate entity. You have to look at what's going to cost us to run this day in, day out, and what's going to cost us to put the bad one in.
Then you could decrease the capital.
You could decrease the capital improvement costs and not be able to. Right, yeah, I just want to make sure you.
Okay, so now the grants out there, we get it to where we can pay for the whole thing. And all we have to do is come up with $3-4.
That would be nice. Unlikely. But no, I mean,
So
That would be a great goal, right? I mean, that's like, that is a
survey
true.
done after this came out. By that survey, you could track how we perform.
Okay. So he's saying that one tracking mechanism would be a survey that goes out after you folks have conducted this training on the PER numbers, and they're able to release that out.
And then re-release the survey.
Yeah, that would be a tracking mechanism as well. So I think there's two. The first benchmark is this meeting, which is all of you going to the numbers. The second would be releasing the survey with the results of that. And is there a third?
Can you do those in more?
Sure. So the first one would be you guys setting up a meeting to go over the PER numbers and the options and getting a better understanding. And then at some point when they're comfortable releasing the survey again with options. And really, that's the second. And the third is the feedback from the survey. That's really a true benchmark. If you get more results.
Right. I think we can use, if we work this right, we can use that survey monkey to get most of the owners and see who's ready and who hasn't.
So when you say the survey monkey, so are you suggesting that maybe is we did an electronic poll instead of the postcards that we may get the rest of the responses.
Right, I think we get a better response with you, George.
Because it's in an electronic form. It's on our website in an electronic form. But feedback on how we can get those responses would be fantastic. Because we have it right now in an electronic form, and we have it on those cards that are return mail, self-addressed return mail. But there's another way. Please let us know.
What was the result between electronic?
That's a fantastic question. I do not have the answer. But that's a great question.
We usually see.
Yeah, I have to know what you're talking about. That survey monkey, George, I mean, the one that goes to all our owners.
Emails. That tells us whether they opened it or.
Right.
So they looked at.
So I think that ours is in a Google survey, and it also does that.
It tells you if they opened it.
For the Google surveys,
I'm not sure. I can't.
we'll get back to you.
Yeah, survey monkey, that's why I thought Andrew used that for certified over now.
Yeah.
So they can tell who's looked at it, who asked it down, and again.
We'll investigate it because I think that would be a great tracking mechanism also.
Perfect.
Why haven't you answered it?
So I'm gonna click, just finish up this section here, and then we'll take a break. And after we're done with this, it will be Erica taking over to do all the options. But basically, what we've done by answering this is we've now started your implement action plan. I don't know if you caught that, but basically, so the priority management area for FV, the description is what we've captured, understanding of our numbers and our options. And basically, the first action we're going to do is how do we just for that to understand these numbers in the PER. The second action, you already have this. But the second is that we survey them and we monitor the results. So we've already started something. What I will say is that in itself is a lot because once we start doing perception, that may flesh out something else that we need to advance. But this would just keep us on track as we move forward, and we can start to dissect into more of these as we move on. So can you take a quick 5-minute break? A minute break?
Sure.
Thank you. So she's saying that. Upcoming workshops we could really consider is the one where we go into the PER numbers. But there is a complement to that that maybe will help you folks. It's up to you if you want to do it or not. But if we came in, it would be a long day. We could do it in one day, or we could do meaning the PER first and then my training, or we could do 2 separate. But I think it's good to have a training on rates and what goes into a rate when you're charging sewer rates, so that when you guys get the numbers from the PER, I don't know whether you do it before or after. I leave it up to you, but just so in your mind, no matter what you're looking at, that PER, a new PER, you can now dissect it to say, okay, how does this relate to the customer? If I've got a bill, then where would these numbers go in the rates? Where do these numbers go in the rate? It's all one. But I'd also like to propose, it's good for me because it pushed us, we've been wanting to do it. If there's any way Erica could get the Mauna Lani's way of doing their rates, if I can get a hold of like a county and just get one, we can give you in the rate setting class options on how certain people do rates. On the water side, there are many options, and I'll just say a little bit on that. On the water side, it can be a flat fee. It can be based on usage purely. Some of them have decided based on their community, it's a tiered structure. Because they've got low income and high income, if you use up to so many thousand gallons, you pay this rate. If you go above that, you pay a higher rate. So with sewer, it would be good for us to see what's done in the state. We may not be able to get a lot depending on the response, but I can try to see if I can get something from the house. If not Big Island, maybe Maui or Kauai, and just see what their rate structure looks like. And if they just charge 1 fee, if they charge 2, if they assess, if you can get from Mauna Lani. Truthfully, I will say this: if you don't have that and you have the PER, you'll get to it, but it'll be a lot harder than if you have some foundation of where those numbers go. relation to charging. So I throw that out as something we can look at as our next series.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Great.
The other thing is we only have, I think, an hour and a half left. So what the intent is now, because it can get really off track, is for a long time you guys have been wanting those options. And so we've narrowed it down to categories. We're going to go into some of that, but there still may be more that's needed later. So just keep that in mind with the time frame to get out at 12. If we could leave here with at least the core options that have been identified and the areas they dissect into, that would be awesome. And we would have at least achieved that today. Okay, perfect. Erica?
Okay, thank you, Mahana. So what we're going to go into now are the actual ownership and operation options that so far Coral has investigated, and some of the folks that we've spoken with. Am I unpaused?
Let me see. It's okay, try it out. Did that work? It should work. Yeah, there's a little bit of a lag.
Okay, so thank you. So first, these are the options and the scenarios that go along with the on-site treatment recommendation. So option A is owned, operated, and managed treatment facility for Puako. So option A would be the Puako community taking on all of those roles. Option B is what is called a build and gift, and we'll go into what each one of these options mean a little bit more throughout the presentation. Option C is what a lot of you folks have been talking about, which is the Chapter 32 Special Improvement Financing by Community Facilities District. And option D, release project to a third party as a whole. So each one of these scenarios are very, very detailed if you actually break it down into how I was saying, how you apply for funding, who would be applying for funding, who would have a role of operator, manager, and technical within each of those. We're going to give right now a real overview of each one of these scenarios, and hopefully we'll get through just even the overview today and in future workshops, depending on, I mean, if you folks want to know more detail about all four, we can do that and then break down specifically A, B, C, and D in further workshops. If you feel that there's one option we can remove from the very beginning, then that will allow us to focus more on just the options that are most appealing to the community.
Yeah, probably A.
Perfect. That's great. That saves us a whole bunch of time, though, so that's fantastic. And then, because we've been talking so much about it, I didn't want to leave out the Manalani option of connecting to Hawaii American Water. We're not really going to go into that. This is really clearly mapped out for us. So this would be almost kind of like a great example to use as a, I don't want to say a model, but an example where most of the components and unknowns are really minimal, and we can lay it out really clearly, which I also think that the PER does. Any more discussion with the Manalani is going to need some more higher up discussion with Hawaii American Water and possible legal attorneys coming in and playing their appropriate roles. So we're not going to dive into this option today, but I didn't want to just exclude it because I know it's important to the community. So as we look at these options, these comparison criteria are a lot of the reasons that we are hosting these workshops right now, is that in really outlining and understanding the scenarios that we've investigated, these criteria are answers that Coral can't really give. This is much more appropriate to come from the community. So financial obligation, these criteria will shift and will change depending on what scenario we move forward with, whether it be the A, B, C, or D. So financial obligation means that what is the obligation to that owner in paying back, say, capital costs, in paying back and retaining operation and maintenance costs, in having to hire an operator, hire a contractor. Depending on the scenario you pick, the financial obligation, say, to the Puako community, if we're going to start with the Puako community taking on this responsibility, the financial obligation will either increase or decrease with the specific scenario. So later on, we'll look at this low, medium, or high, and we'll reevaluate these in comparison to the actual scenarios that we're going to look at. So community time and obligation, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's how much time it's going to take for the community to, say, own it, operate it, and maintain it. If you did that option A, you know, you might be at the very highest of your obligation in time, as I'm sure Sarah really well knows, because that's what she does, only one of those components in her wastewater treatment plant at the condo.
We're taking that option.
Right. Well, we're going in with an open mind. No, I'm just kidding. Community voting power. So community voting power is how much say do you want as a community in how your plant is maintained and operated? How much do you want a say in the rate structure, and how much you can influence the rate structure when it's being remodeled or even developed? How much does the community want to play a role and be able to provide input to the rules and regulations of this facility once it's established? Opportunities for funding, that's basically how many funding opportunities within each of the scenarios that we've been able to investigate so far. Public Utility Commission, we haven't really spoken a lot about the Public Utility Commission, but they are it is basically a body that Mahana and Frank might need to chime in. It's basically a body that oversees both the utility's main interest as well as the customer's main interest. So they're kind of, I don't want to, are they the managers?
Yeah, so one simple way to know the PUC.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. The PUC basically steps in if there is a service being sold to one outside party, and they do regulate the utility. So you've got the PUC, and then you've got the consumer advocate. The consumer advocate is there for the consumer, and will challenge the PUC when the PUC receives a rate increase. So to be regulated by PUC, keeping it in a nutshell, there's a whole other layer. But to be regulated, you'd have to be selling to one outside person. So when communities form their own co-op, per se, that everyone in the community is an owner of that system and is also using that system, doesn't necessarily mean they'll be PUC regulated because it's not one outside person. So in your case, if Puako forms something, PUC may not have jurisdiction. If you decided to sell back to the county or sell back to Mamalani, sell anything or have them tie in, and they're not a part of the ownership, PUC will step in because that requires regulation. That's in a nutshell. We won't go into any more than that.
There's pros and cons. You got to look at it.
So liens to property, the liens to property go a lot and tie into almost those funding opportunities that we've had. And then the unknown for the certain scenario that we're going to lay out. Because some of the scenarios have a little bit more unknowns than others and are not as clearly laid out. So just to review, this slide should look familiar, but this is now the potential stakeholders to Puako wastewater treatment facility scenarios that we're about ready to go over. So most of them are pretty consistent to what Mahana has touched on in the previous workshops. You have that regulatory body that really just doesn't change no matter what you do. We're always going to have to go under EPA regulations. We're always going to have to work with Department of Health and Clean Water and Wastewater branch. The treatment facility is definitely going to need an owner. It's definitely going to need an operator. There's also you folks. So you, I'm sure, need to kind of distinguish in that you may not, you being the Puako community, may not be just the owner and operator, but you also are the customers. So you would be a customer as being somebody that's tied into this facility. County Wastewater Branch and PUC. So these two at the bottom, County Wastewater Branch and PUC, are additional stakeholders that have been added from Mahana's original slide, because those two players do come in, again, depending on which scenario you're looking at. And then I'm just going to read this because this probably could go into a much larger conversation of exactly what the Public Utility Commission is. But the Commission's primary purpose is to ensure that regulated companies efficiently and safely provide their customers with adequate and reliable services at the reasonable rate, while providing regulated companies with a fair opportunity to earn a reasonable rate. So, again, these folks would come into play only in a couple of scenarios. So now we can go ahead and start diving in to the options that we've laid forward. So this is the very, I don't know, I was going to make a joke, but I won't. This is a community-owned, managed, and operated scenario. So this would start with the owner as being a 501c for the Puako community. So this would require a nonprofit corporation to be established inside of the Puako community. Again, I'm not going into the nuts and bolts of these scenarios because there's a couple of different ways that we can actually do this within the community. And then that organization or that 501c group is now the owner of this facility. There's a little bit of a lag in my clicker, so I apologize. So the manager would work for the 501c, would work for this small nonprofit group that's established inside of the community, or you could do it. So you could do it internally within the community, and I don't mean to call Sarah out, but Sarah is managing right now a wastewater treatment facility. So it could be Sarah. You could go to public or private entities, and you could go outside of your community. But basically, this is just to show that there are several different avenues that you can take to find a manager if you choose to buy into the ownership of the wastewater treatment facility, that you could find a manager either internally or externally of your community and have them be your contract to where you're not actually managing it, but you're managing them.
No, yeah, we can skip this whole A.
Yeah, we'll skip A altogether.
Just skip A altogether.
So we're gonna go through it. We're gonna have to suffer through it. It's not much longer. But I'm hearing you. I listen to you loud and clear. So an operator would be the same thing. That 501c would manage that contract, but the operator could be it would be found externally, and it would have to be a grade 3 operator because the plant, if you remember, is an R1 treatment facility, so it requires a certain level of operator training. And then the customer, and this is really going to be consistent throughout this whole presentation, is the Puako and Wailea Bay community. The PER has separated both of those to individual costs. They costed out Puako, and then they did a separate analysis for Wailea Bay, and then did a combination of them. So inside of the PER, they have both of these cost outs of what it would do, what it would mean to sewer Puako connected to a facility, as well as sewer Wailea Bay connected to what was that? It's not different, it's just additional. So you can do it solely for Puako, but it would make sense to include Wailea just because they're right there. So just in developing the PER, separated the cost so it could be more of a community choice as to how that actually happens.
We set that up for the Puako community and Wailea Bay. Now, what about if the U of H, are they a separate customer? Or do we include them at the beginning as part of?
So I didn't pull them out only because I was just putting them along within the community as a whole. So once they're
U of H,
established
okay, so
there.
you've got it all established as U of H is going to be part of the Puako community? If they put in that structure down there next to the boat ramp?
No, I think that those discussions still need to take place as to how they want to participate, how they want to partner. But you are correct in that if they, or when they do build in Puako, they would be part of that community, and they do need a wastewater treatment plant. So we have engaged in conversations of what a partnership would look like, but I didn't feel the need to single them out in this. So thank goodness we're getting away from option A because nobody likes that option.
Can I say one thing before you move on? Once you do that, let's say you turn this over, you realize you relinquish all responsibility. So if you're going to do that, make sure you have caveats or things in place because your O&M is set for $135. And if you don't have any long-term agreement, there's nothing that can say a year and a half after they take over, they're going to raise that $52.50. So make sure you understand that, in that for there could be a little bit of give and take in there. You can turn over, but you still want to be part of the loop for any potential increases and things like that. You put that in your agreement with yourself. So just make sure you know about that.
Oh, no, yeah, part of that management. Yeah, we're still part of the management.
So that goes in exactly what Frank's talking about, and I'm gonna backtrack just because he's giving examples of what's ahead. But that's this comparison criteria of what we talked about.
Right.
So with each one of these scenarios, it's kind of like a give and take. What is, and we could, Mahana and I talked about this, developing this presentation, is that if as a whole in the community you're struggling to decide which scenario fits your community the very best, it may be valuable to go in and see and weigh this criteria and say, okay, what is most important to our community? Is the most important thing to our community that we have no time and obligation into this facility? Because depending on what's important to you in this list of comparison criteria, your decision for which scenario you pick may shift. Because it might be really, really important to you guys that you want to have a say and input into your rate structure. That you don't want to make somebody or have somebody else come up with your rate structure and just be told what it is. So these are the comparisons that we need to think about as we look at these options. Thank you, Frank. Right.
That's
the most expensive one right there. I know I've been there.
We like the cost breakdown on that. Okay, so building gift is a little bit more, it's a little bit more complicated, but it's still very clear. So a building gift, this is during the development phase of building infrastructure. Seeing the pipes go in the ground, putting in the pumps in each individual home, putting in the main line, and feeding it to the facility. So during the development of infrastructure phase, this same group, the same 501c nonprofit that's going to be established within the Puako community by homeowners, that's going to be your owner. So you folks are going to build the facility, make sure that all the infrastructure is going to go in with the caveat of knowing that once it's, well, hold on, I'm jumping ahead of myself, I'm sorry. So the manager during the development phase can be a third party, so you can contract somebody else out, obviously, to do, so that could be Aqua Engineering to manage the development phase. It could be a construction company that's going to manage the infrastructure development of everything going in. It could be possibly Coral that would contract with the 501c and help manage still the project as a whole and make sure that everything is going to go into the ground okay. And then the operator is not needed yet at this point, so there's no operator role for the development phase. So once the plant is up and running and it's operational, 100% of the Puako community is all tied in and we're ready to use it, that is when it is going to be shifted to whoever would like to take over the ownership role of the facility. So that means that then it will be transferred to a private company. Right now, we've had discussion with Hawaii American Water, who are the owner / operator for the Manalani. This build and give scenario is how Manalani was transferred to Hawaii American Water. When it was originally being built, they were had the hopes that then the county would take it over and operate it and manage it and maintain it. That, because of the timeline and just the process, ended up going to a private company, which was Hawaii American Water. So then they established that infrastructure and then gifted it to Hawaii American Water, or somehow there was a transfer of that utility to this third party to become now the owner. The collection system is still going to be maintained under this 501c. So the collection system ownership to date would be the 501c inside of the Puako community. So, and this actually was interesting in our investigation with the Manalani property, is that it does kind of stay consistent within areas of the Manalani property where those different property developments and owners, they actually maintain their own collection system. So they have HOAs within all of those little properties within Manalani, and their HOA maintains this collection system for them. But then Hawaii American Water maintains and operates the actual science.
So the Manalani still has some ownership or some big involvement?
Just the plumbing.
The Manalani owns the facility, owns that, what were we calling it, the utility?
The treatment plant?
Yeah, they own the treatment plant. The separate HOAs and developments, the condominiums, those folks, they own their sewer system, their collection system, that then goes to Hawaii American Water
That's what we
Treatment
would
Plant.
have.
So that's exactly,
Exactly what we would have if we joined with Manalani.
But we're talking about a plant, the waste treatment.
We're talking about a wastewater treatment facility. So this is still sticking with the recommendation. This is the recommendation of moving forward with a Puako on-site treatment facility. So this is if we went with a scenario of building and gifting it. So it would start out as being built by the Puako community, by this 501c, this nonprofit group, and then with the intention of then gifting that ownership and basically turning it over to an example of Hawaii American Water. Not saying that that agreement by any means has been made or established, but that's where we've investigated so far for the build and gift. Yes.
So who is setting the rates at Manalani? Is it Hawaii Water or is it Manalani?
Hawaii American Water.
Okay, and so if this system, if this option, it would be if we gifted it to is setting our rates.
Yes. And just so you know, PUC does oversee the Manalani facility. That's, we'll also we'll go into that.
That's right.
Yes.
We build it
Yep.
and we sell it with, we're working on this rate that we want to use it now that we're building it ourselves. So when whoever we sell it to, we want to have that rate guaranteed for the first few years when we're selling it, so they don't gouge us right out of the gate. Is that?
That is an excellent question, Peter. That is information we do not have. Those conversations, I feel with those conversations.
We got plenty of them.
Yes, to interject, those are truly negotiation.
Yeah, that's when you negotiate, right, that's when you negotiate when you, okay.
Yeah, and those are those little things that it's just too much for today because we, this is just where we were able to bring it to this right here.
I do have one question.
Yeah.
Maybe just because I'm missing it. If you build and give, is the collection system to remain under the full specific if Hawaii American
Water was that, or just anybody? Nobody would then take the collection system over?
That's a really good question too. So does everybody understand that?
No, we get rid of the whole thing, or do we keep the collection?
So that's what Mahana is asking. That's exactly what Mahana is asking. So this is a scenario that we have spoken with Hawaii American Water about. So under their scenario of possibly doing a build and gift with them, they do not, it doesn't sound like they tend to take ownership of the collection system. Now, would that change? They do not. They do not, no. So like I was saying, in Manalani, they do the same exact thing. In most of the collection systems at each of these individual developments, those developer or the HOA continues owning that collection system, and the Hawaii American Water is running the facility and owning the facility, the plants.
So do we then, Puako becomes a kind of a partial owner? In the way, in the things we talked about, owner and manager?
No, you would be the owner of the collection system, and then that's where your ownership would stop. And then they, who this third party would be, would own the actual utility.
Then do we have the liability for the piping and leaking and all that?
For the collection system,
Which is
yes.
the pipe and the pumps?
Yes.
The pipe that runs all the way.
Correct. Correct. They don't want to maintain each individual lateral connection. So they are fine when the effluent gets to their plant and they can treat, and then that's all theirs. Once it gets to this force main, the first force main that they own, then it's their problem. Anything before that, so the laterals that go from each home to the pool, like if the pipe ran down Puakō Beach Drive, all of that collection would be the 501c.
So we would then need an entity to manage that?
Yes.
And do billing and do all that stuff?
Yeah.
It would be a separate bill.
Exactly.
No, that's why I had asked my question, because that's just one option, but it sounds like it's not necessarily been investigated, but if there was an entity that would just take the whole thing on, then you wouldn't have that. And that's why.
I think we're looking to get rid of the collection system too.
And so there's no.
So let's hold on, because we're going on a little bit, but I want you guys to ask these
That's
questions.
good.
Yeah. So definitely understand each scenario.
Okay, we would have to do that with the Mahana.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With the monitor.
Right, we don't have to run one, you'd have to have our own collection.
Okay, so this is again the build and gift when it's operational. This is for the manager. So the collections manager, so this is again for the collections within the community to collect all the sewer and waste. That again is going to be the 501c. Or you guys can just contract a manager out. So again, you could go to Sarah, pull her out from the condo, see if she wants to do it. No.
So great of Sarah.
But
Let's get somebody like Paul, get somebody like Paul, who does, is a pumping guy, who does
right,
that stuff.
so to not make a joke, so I apologize for the jokes, but to not make a joke out of it, Sarah, you were saying that the person that, no, never mind, that's the operator that operates your system, right? Yeah, I'm gonna backtrack.
So Erica, we could hire a private contractor who would then take the responsibility of doing the billing and
Absolutely.
handling all that.
Absolutely.
But then we still have a liability.
Yes. Yeah, you'll always maintain ownership unless you find that, unless we find that third party that will allow us to gift everything to them.
Right.
Which we haven't quite found yet.
We might find with an earthquake prone living on a volcano.
So the facility manager, is going to be that third party. So that same third party that was in the previous slide as the owner, they're going to manage the actual utility. They're going to manage the facility.
The facility, not the collection.
Not the collections. Nope.
So for just discussion's sake, if we can use plant for the facility and then collection system.
Thank you.
Okay.
So just keep it simple.
Thank you.
And collection, right.
Yeah.
That helps me. Is it going to go?
It did. It just-
Okay. So now we're going to the operator role. So again, this is once the plant is operational. Remember that during the development phase, we didn't need an operator, right? There was no operator needed. So now once it's operational, the facility operator again, is going to be that private company that we gifted the plant to. And the collections operator, again, would be the 501c and whoever you would like to contract out to do the operations of the collection system. So that would be who's going to come if a pump runs out individual homes, who's going to come if something gets clogged, if the power goes out, and you need help with your collections. That's going to be this operator right here.
Okay, that's the problem that they have at Mahana. So they have, is that like somebody like a Big Island mechanic who takes that whole situation over? Or?
No, from what I understand, I did talk to somebody down there, they actually have a separate operator that's running that entire collection system and the plant itself. It's an actual operating company. I did find that out, yeah.
Yeah, that's what we need to talk to.
Right, and so we could seek them out, and they could take on this operator role. And I believe that same company for Mahana is also taking on the facility manager role.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do want to clarify, the very first workshop, it was my job, and I have not found the answer, is I still need to find out if this collections person needs to be licensed. If it's a separate thing from the plant. So that was a question you guys had, because that could affect cost. So I didn't forget, I just have not got that answer yet.
Who built that plant? Your new friend, what's her name?
Which plant?
The Mahana plant. Who's the developer?
That was, his name was,
I know. I totally.
It's not the woman.
no.
Yeah, a lady. I'm so sorry. That's the lead engineer who designed it.
Okay.
Is I'm forgetting all of them.
It's, what's the guy with the golf course over here? What's his name? It always triggers my memory. No. Anyway, I'll get the name, but then
We have the ability to lay out to lay out all of those players of who built it and who's maintaining it, operating it at Mahana. And we definitely, I haven't forgotten that everybody wants to go over there and talk and sit with them. So
no, it was a different.
Nancy Burns. Thank you so much. So Nancy Burns is the engineer for it. So she did the engineer and designing for it. And the developer, I can't remember the lead developer's name. He's the contractor.
What I'm thinking about.
Mhm.
And I thought he was the same color.
Yeah, thank you.
Nancy Burns.
So that would be the operator. So you again do have the opportunity to just contract out for an operator as well as the manager. And then the customer again would be the same. Do we have questions on this? Because this is the last slide for the building gift. Are we good?
Yep.
Okay. This one's a little bit tricky. So this is the Chapter 32 Special Improvement Financing by Community Facilities District. I want to mention that I know recently the PCA had a guest to the annual meeting to go over this process. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you guys might even be able to even feed more information into this than possibly what I'm going to present. But just know that this is what we've been, as an organization, have been able to research and come up with in regarding this scenario. So the intent of going with Chapter 32 Special Improvement Financing and Facilities District, we basically wanted to identify what outcomes we were desiring to go through this scenario and through this process. So possibly mandate connection. We believe that if we developed a district, maybe it would require mandate connection. And that if we built it, if we build it, they will come, or they have to tie in. So that was a possibility. Another outcome we were hoping to receive from it was capital funding opportunities. EPA funding filters through the county and goes through DOH, through SRF funding. So it was going to open the SRF fundings to us. Another outcome was operation and maintenance. community wouldn't need to operate it and maintain it. That would be done by county. Or ownership and responsibility, same thing, that the community could kind of wash their hands over ownership and responsibility if we went through this process. So we have sat down with quite a few people. This is the process. I'm definitely not going over it with you today, but I just wanted this to represent that it is an actual regulatory process that is established in Hawaii. But how it got established is that it is a process that has been used for a long time on the mainland in states with communities and also with their county council people. So this was adopted, I believe, from the state of California. And what was that?
The Melrose plan.
There you go. So, and then adopted into the state of Hawaii. So it is established, or at least on paper. So once we've sat down with representatives of our council, we've sat down with the Department of Health, Wastewater, Clean Water Branch, as well as the county, to kind of get their feedback on this process and see, one, if they knew about this process and how they could help guide us through completing it, and then trying to really lay out clear examples of who these roles and responsibilities would go to. So some of the things that we ended up finding out in our research is that this Chapter 32 process has never been done in the state for wastewater development. From what I have been told, it's been done across the board 2 times, once for water, and so drinking water, and another for I think it was a power upgrade, or had to do with electrical power. So they needed to form a facilities district in order to be able to establish county power to their community. So it has been done before for other development projects, but never for wastewater. In going in and speaking again with these players that are in the stakeholder category of developing infrastructure for wastewater, the roles and responsibilities are really not well defined. So the county really, if the county council person established it, the county really doesn't know where they fall in this process. Does it mean that we're mandated to operate it? Does it mean that we're mandated to own it and build it? So the lines about who these roles and responsibilities go to, a lot of them that we've talked about throughout this workshop, are really just not defined within this process. The process is there, but what you do after the process is completely, totally missing. So the support from the regulatory body that we've received so far for this scenario has been really, really low. Because of the kind of fuzziness of the roles and responsibilities not being clearly defined, the fact that it hasn't been done here in Hawaii, who we've spoken to have honestly advised us to not follow through with this process, mainly because these outcomes are not obtainable through this process. So again, if this is different information, I would love to hear the information that the PCA gathered from their guest speaker, but this is just where we've come to today within our own research.
Pete Hoffman did propose a facilities district. For one thing, he said part of the problem was probably most of the people that he talked to have no understanding of Chapter 32 whatsoever. He said it's very clear that this is a very good tool and can be done. I think it takes 55% of the residents' approval. Once it can be done, the financing can be structured within the tax bill, which would be a great thing, just be part of the property taxes. But he said when they did it in Waikoloa, they hired an outside consultant from California who was very familiar with setting up a facilities district. And once it's set up, he said the council can hardly refuse it because it's so clear and so clean. He said it's just a total lack of understanding of the Chapter 32 process.
What did he say about the capacity of the regulatory bodies that would be responsible to take it over?
Well, he said probably the county would not take it
Yeah, I said the county definitely.
But- But it does clear up, it is a tool for financing, along with grants and whatever else. It again can mandate, with 55%, it can mandate everybody to be part of the district, which, as far as I'm concerned, would be a big help for Puakō. And then we could determine how we structure financing for our, say, lower cost. Anyway, it's a process, and P would be a great one to talk to, but
Yeah, definitely. I'd be interested. I really want to.
But what it does is it mandates that everybody hooks up to it, so if we only need to borrow $1 million from it, we could get the mandate to get everybody hooked up. We just have that amount on the tax bill.
So-
The cost of hooking up to go back to the homeowner then?
No, I mean, if we could cut other financing from other things, but use this as
yes,
a
long
mandate.
term probably.
Long-term.
I think that should really be pursued because for like real estate, like in Coast View, there was a subdivision of Palisades that didn't have water and they used that.
Right.
And they had a means of billing people,
Mhm.
through the property
Mhm.
tax. And that works out well because it's,
Sort of hides it a little bit.
Yeah.
It softens it up.
it just, yeah. It's part of the whole real estate package.
Do you look at that
sense.
bonus to increase property values then in your terms?
It could, because you have, instead of private water systems with PVC pipes that go all over the place, you feed them up and, maybe it's healthy water.
So when Peter went and spoke with you guys, did he mention who then would take on that role of owner operator?
No,
And
no, it
he didn't go into that. He just went through the process.
Just process talk about the district.
And I really do want to catch up and follow up on this conversation because I'm really interested to learn about the mandate of connection. Because that would really weigh this scenario very high if we could actually say this is the only way to mandate connection, then that could shift this scenario. Then you could go back to that list of criteria and mandating connection. I mean, if we can find a process to mandate connection, that I would believe would be a very highly weighted criteria. So I definitely want to follow up with that conversation.
That's my question. How else would you do it?
So absolutely. So I was even told that this would not allow mandating of a connection. So that's why I'm saying, like, I definitely want to follow up because the people.
Yeah, it's 55%. That's why we have to get 55%. That throws everybody in that puts everybody in.
55% is doable.
Yeah, for our community. If we get that one.
Right.
But if you're just doing it on an individuals to hook up, we're going to have a ton of individuals that will stick with cesspool that aren't.
Oh,
This
definitely.
is the way to do
Absolutely.
it. This is the way to do it. It'll legitimize it and everybody has to get on board. I mean, because, the county is under pressure from EPA and Department of Health to clean up all the wastewater.
Mandate this in.
So if I can go back to this, so definitely, as you can see, even just from this conversation, that additional research is needed for this scenario. We really need to have it clearly lined out, is that if we're wanting to use this as a financing mechanism, is it the cleanest way to get the financing for capital? Is it the best way to get this financing for capital? If it can mandate connection, fantastic, but then who is the owner? Who is the operator? Do we still need, because within this rule package, it can be turned over to a private entity from the council, dependent if the project is beneficial to the greater public. I absolutely think that this project falls within that category. But then really laying out a little bit more clearly, if this process takes 10 years to do, is it worth waiting that 10 years to get this off the ground? And I'm just throwing these out there. I'm not saying that we need to talk about them right now, but these are the questions that have gone through our mind in trying to say, what is this? Is this the best avenue for us to go? So,
I have a question.
Yeah.
Now, have you thought, if you didn't use that, how would you get everybody to sign up? You haven't even gone through that. How would you get everybody to commit? Because unless you use this.
To commit to what?
Commit to hook up to a sewer system.
Well, you guys are saying that it will mandate it.
Yeah, but I mean, if you don't use this, what's your alternative?
We have not found any way to mandate connection. I will say that up front and very, very clear. Through none of our investigation with any regulatory body or any representative, we have not found one way to mandate connection. So if you guys can be the key holder to that, that would absolutely be fantastic. We will continue to investigate and try to find that mandate. To date, we have not. Yeah. So, great question, Robbie. So, taking those things into consideration and the unknowns of this scenario, these are kind of also a little bit unknown and a little bit, you know, just not quite as clear as the other scenarios. So the owner, would it be the county wastewater division, or would it be this private entity that would be given the responsibility from the county council through the process? And if it is that private entity, does that mean now that we still have to go back and establish a 501c within the Puako community who's still going to have those same roles and responsibilities as the other options? Or does the county have any capacity, which I think we all know that answer to take on some of these roles and responsibilities? But so right now, ownership, possibly one of these two scenarios. A manager, essentially, this is going to stay consistent throughout all of the roles. The manager, kind of the same thing. We haven't gotten a lot of feedback from the county saying that they could do any of these roles. So does it fall again on that 501c, that private community entity that would be established within the community? So having more discussions around these roles and responsibility would obviously be really valuable, because from what we've heard throughout this workshop is that you would like, as a community, as little responsibility in the operation and maintenance and management of the plant. And then the operator, you know, I should have just left it up with the 501c as well, so I should have put this, but this is mainly going to be, you know, a contractor, so whoever the owner and manager are would need to contract out to get a grade 3 operator. So the operator would still be consistent as a grade 3 operator, because the facility is an R1 standing facility. So the customer, as in all of them, will stay consistent with Puako and Wailea Bay communities, depending on what the community moves forward with. Option D, so this is the last of the scenarios. These are the last options that we have to present. And this is a third-party or outside ownership management and operations. So we have spoken with a couple of entities and a couple of firms that are interested in the Puako project and have shown some interest in taking over the PUR as is and doing all of it. Building it, operating it, maintaining it, owning it from the ground up. So in this scenario, if a third party were to take over the project and development of the plant, the owner would transfer from what it is right now to a third party. And this definitely, as I'm sure everybody could imagine, would take a lot of legal fees, a lot of legal assistance in making this transfer, and making sure that it's going to move forward with the established criteria that Coral and the Puako community wants to receive from this. So the opportunity of saying, yes, we want it to be an R1 treated facility. We want, you know, outlined as it is in the PUR.
So are there examples of companies locally that you know of that maybe do this?
There are. So that is the Caltech Water, and they have They have done this with a few examples along this shoreline, and I believe they also are doing the Waikoloa one. So it was Waikoloa. So they also have done this with Waikoloa.
They build and operate.
They do. They do everything. They do everything. The whole, from the ground up. They will put it in for you. They'll own it, operate it, and maintain it. And you essentially would relinquish everything to them.
That's what the
Not that.
Yeah.
Right.
Waikoloa Village.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's a Hawaii water service. People know them, who live in Waikoloa. There's the plant across the Naiho'umanu, right across the intersection, and then there's a Waikoloa plant. But Hawaii Water Service is a company. Again, nothing's been communicated with them.
No.
That's what their business is. They buy small utilities. They own them, they maintain them, they operate them, and they build them sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they.
Is that the one where the windmill is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. They actually own
They
them.
set their own fees.
They do. So they're PUC regulated and heavily because they are a for-profit. They're all over the United States. Here they're called Hawaii Water Service. I thought they were under Cal Water. But
They are.
They are, yeah.
They are.
Okay. Because
Cal Water.
there's a big mainland.
And that's who does the Waikoloa.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So there are some on island, again, not to commit to them, but, or to say that we've spoken to them, but there are ones like that, that's their business. That's what they do.
You're big on
They are. Cal Water's big.
But right now, they went to the PUC to ask for like a 92% increase in water rates for Puakō and Puakō. So a lot of people are against them, and a realtor wrote an article which I sent to the Water Commission because they control the water, Mahana Golf Course and that whole area, and it should be a public trust, with the county of Hawaii.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. So we're not going to call anybody out in this third party. We're not going to say that this has been arranged, that we've sat down with these folks to do this. These are just, again, these are the scenarios. So the manager would be the wastewater operations management company. So that would be that third party company that manages and operates wastewater. Again, the operator would again be that third party entity that is going to take over the utility or the plant. Oops. My clicker's messing up, so I apologize. And then the customer again would be consistent throughout. So is there any questions on this one? Because that pretty much concludes presenting the scenarios that we have to choose from.
Well, that all sounds scary, except for the first one sounded better, isn't it?
That's interesting you say that, Sarah. No.
So I have a question about
yeah.
this kind of out.
Yeah.
So they're buying an existing system, or did they put it in for a developer? They've done both. But it's, I mean, you've got that scenario, you've got to have all the owners not give.
Right.
It's not, they're not going to, they couldn't come in at Puakō and say, well, we're going to put in a sewer system.
They could. The owner would be the third party.
But you can sign up if you want or not.
Right.
That's not going to work.
Oh no, you mean the owner's buy-in to connect.
No, I say this company.
Yes.
They come in, they're not going to put in a sewer system and all this thing and only have 20 people sign up.
Totally not. No, we still have to have the buy-in. For any of these scenarios to move forward, we absolutely have to have
The
community
only way to do
buy-in.
it is go through C, which is the mandate.
So I'm just wondering, when they come into a community, that community is in the process of being built.
Like Waikoloa, how did they come in before?
So I think what happened is, I don't know all the details, but at Waikoloa, that was Boise Cascade, I think, right, years ago, the development. So at this point, where Hawaii Water Service came in, they bought an existing plant, is what happened. So somebody was selling it at some point, they bought it, I don't know.
So
the sewer system is in already.
Yeah.
So nothing has to be in. So if you look at this Puako project as the foundation of implementing infrastructure, the very first thing that you have to do to implement infrastructure is have a PER. So we basically have started that development. That is what they then would take over. Is that it doesn't have to be existing, it doesn't have to be pipes in the ground, and then they just build a plant. It doesn't have to be any of that. So right now, it could be them approaching us and saying, I read your PER and I'm interested in this community and possibly helping, and this is what we can do. What do you think about it?
And I think the second compliment to the PR is exactly what you said, is community buy-in.
Absolutely.
That's going to be the first thing they look at when they come and talk to whoever it would be.
And we've had those discussions with some of these folks, and it is a question that they ask. What does your community think about this project? What percentage of connection are we really looking at? You're absolutely right. Nobody, we shouldn't, the community shouldn't, nobody should move forward if we think that 20 homes are going to connect. You know, there's not a point in doing that.
The logical thing would be to contact Margaret Willie, council person, and talk to her about it. I mean, that would be the first thing.
She's supportive.
Yeah, she's supportive.
So if you started that right now, and then later on you can get bids from a lot of different other,
Right.
you know, builders.
Oh, yeah, you said mandate.
We'd have to get our 55%.
Yeah.
Sign off.
And I think that would happen, but the sooner you start that process, that you can start right away. Just this past week, the council turned me up, put in for millions. I was just looking for my email for the county to go to the state of Hawaii, a revolving fund.
As far as funding?
Yeah, to request for like $55 million for KLKA, you know, $20 million for Hito pump, you know. So it could be as easy as Margaret writing something to put through the council to request for the state revolving funds for the $10 million infrastructure to build it, and then go through the Chapter 32 along the side.
Great. So, so this is now kind of combining our 4 options and 4 scenarios that we looked at, and then it's including, if you see in these white boxes next to each pie, it's that comparison criteria that we were all thinking about as going through these options. So I want to go through these with you, and I want you all to be able to see how some of these options relate to those comparison criteria that we talked about before. So in option A, you can see, so 3 stars is high, 2 stars is medium, 1 star is low. So financial obligation for option A, that's basically the community does all of the roles. That's very high. Community time and obligation is also high. Community voting power is high because they're going to have a say into that voting. Community input to rate structure is going to be high. Community input to utility and rules and regs is going to be high. Opportunities for funding. We've laid out, you know, a lot of different funding opportunities for the capital, so it is high as well. PUC regulated is going to be low to non-existent because it's not going to be a for sale or a for-profit business. Liens on Puako property, depending on your funding source, the liens, that's where the liens come into play. There are funding mechanisms that we've identified for the capital where liens might not be necessary. So liens are a little bit of this medium possibility within these scenarios. And unknown, other than the support, you know, there's not really much unknown when it comes to the community option. We really do have it laid out. I think it's just a matter of moving forward with some of these. So if we're going to go into the build and get, does all that make sense for the community?
I'm just going to make it bigger for you guys.
So I was going to say, but it's going to.
Oh, and then we have to slide it, I think. Sorry.
Sorry, we're trying to make it. I had to shrink it to small font so it would fit in the box.
Huh. Well, actually, I don't know how to do that on the PC.
Oh,
So maybe just go.
Here, zoom in.
Did they mandate every?
And you're here, Erica?
Yeah.
Could you then use your subjects?
Is that through it? So,
So if you had a house on Sandy Drive, and sewer went in years ago.
give it a second. You gotta unzoom yours now.
Okay, okay.
If that makes sense.
There
Because
you
you're at
Yeah.
150. Okay.
So you may have to sit here and do that for the other pies.
Sure.
Please.
We can do that.
Okay, here we go.
Bingo.
Oh, finally. Okay, so the building gift. So the financial obligation. Does the financial obligation make sense in these? I really want to make sure that it does. Coming from community perspective now only. So this would be the financial obligation that the community has to pay back on, you know, that capital infrastructure, building that O&M account and making sure that you have that cushion to operate your facility and operate the plant. Make sure that you are getting you're collecting the monthly fees. So this financial obligation does decrease in the building gift because now the financial obligation is only for that collection system, right? So you're now only managing the collection system. The obligation decreases once it's operational and goes to that third party. Community time and obligation has also come down a little bit because now you're only concentrating on that collection system. You're no longer having to operate an entire plant and manage an entire plant. Community voting power goes way down to just low because now you don't have voting power. You're not going to have the power that you have for voting on the operation of this plant because it's going to be owned by that third party. Community input to rate structure, same thing. We're not going to have as much input to the rate structure and ongoing costs of the rate structure. Community input to utility rules and regulations, that also has gone down with build and gift. Opportunities for funding, that's still pretty consistently high. We definitely have identified opportunities for funding. It's just a matter of moving through those processes and actually applying for them. And then once we turn it over to the third party, then that's going to be their responsibility to collect the funds of the monthly fees from the customers. PUC regulated goes to high. This would be a PUC regulated plant, as it would be a for-profit business that would be taking over ownership and operation of the plant. Liens on Puako property, again, because the 501c within the community would be doing the development of the plant, the liens kind of stay consistent as in scenario A, in that it really depends on what that financing mechanism is in building the capital infrastructure. And then unknown, it does have a little bit more unknowns because we have to find this third party and make sure that we go through these legal processes of knowing that they're going to take this plant on once it is in operational phase. Okay, and then we are going to move on. We're almost done here.
Oops, I'm sorry.
We're going to move on to go to D.
D, right?
Yeah.
Should be coming up.
And there we go. Okay, so D is now this third party. If we were to turn over the PER as is, and a third party is going to come in and take responsibility over everything, the capital infrastructure development, developing it, doing everything. So financial obligation pretty much goes away for the community, and now the community is only financially obligated to pay their monthly sewer fees. Community time and obligation, same exact thing. Your obligation goes down to low, because now you are no longer operating, managing, or owning any part of the collection system or the plant. Community voting power is down to low. Community input to rate structure is down to low. Community input to rules and regs is also low. Opportunities for funding, it's really just not applicable because that third party takes over all of the funding for the capital and takes over the funding for operation and maintenance. So it's going to be their responsibility to acquire that. PUC regulated, again, it's going to be a for-profit business, so it is going to be PUC regulated. Liens on property, that really should just have been unknown because I don't believe that they do liens on the property because they're the one that is providing the capital infrastructure. But again, those are kind of more detailed information than what we've been able to develop so far. And then it's a little bit medium for unknowns. There's still some questions that we have in here for this option.
Increase
Right, right. Okay, last one.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, wait, no. Oh. We have to do C.
Oh, we went in different order.
We went back, yeah. We're going clockwise. We're going clockwise. Okay, so this is the final scenario. So this is chapter C, using the process to establish a utility district. So financial obligation is going to be unknown because we're not quite sure as to who that owner is. If the council says approves it to be a private party, is that private party still the 501c that has to be established within the community? And then does that maintain a responsibility for the community? Community time and obligation, it really is unknown because of that above one. We don't really know who the owner is going to be. We don't really know the roles and responsibilities for this option. Community voting power. All of these are somewhat low to just we don't really know based off of how this process kind of lays out. And so what we do know for sure, I'm just going to skip to that, is that we know for sure there will be liens on your homes because that is part of the process. And we know for sure that there's a lot of unknowns.
Each two favorite things.
Right, the liens on the property is property tax. That's how they pay for it.
Yeah, so the liens on the property is very well outlined in the process. Yeah, but we did know that for sure that there would be liens on the property. Yes.
We do. Yes. 10% property tax. Yeah, but
okay.
Yeah, look at that. Used to ask every year. He'd ask for a 10% reduction.
So for next steps, we as we move forward, we definitely do need to continue our research, and we will continue our research in laying not just in more detail these scenarios out, but then also getting back to you folks and really breaking down that capital and being able to explain it to you in a very clear way of this cost breakdown. We do have obviously more workshops or more meetings to host. Mahana went over a couple of those, a deeper dive into the PER now that we understand it a little bit more and breaking that down. Depending on one of these scenarios, it sounds like you're really interested into knowing more about the Chapter C and moving forward with investigating that. So maybe a detailed process of how we would go through Chapter C and engaging in conversations with our county council and clean water and wastewater branch and making sure that all of these parties that could have a role in this scenario know their role and have capacity for it. And also the same thing for Manalani. If that's kind of being triggered in your guys' head again, and interest is going in that direction, we want to be able to provide you with more information on that. Community feedback and engagement. We definitely want to continue to ask questions or answer questions that you guys have and make sure that we're getting back to the community as needed. And then maybe once we've established more detail into the process, we've established a greater detailed rate structure analysis and have gotten that back to you, then it might be time to redistribute that survey and see if people's support possibly has changed or if we've garnered more support off of hosting these workshops and really laying out some of this technical information. And then after that, it will be time to arrive at a decision of what of these scenarios does the community want to move forward with. And it really is a community decision. It really does. I mean, I know that I'm preaching to the choir because I've heard it from all of your mouths, is that it requires community buy-in and support. And so that is definitely evident. And before we move forward with anything, we will have to arrive at a decision that the majority of the community feels comfortable with moving forward with.
So it all boils down to those questions of getting the cost structures that we want, the answers to those cost structures.
In the chapter 32, is that just for the financing? Can we be the owner operator at that point?
That's what we got to find out. That's a good one. The guy that asked is Pete.
So you could. So if county is not able to, within their capacity, to operate it and maintain it and own the facility, then that chapter 32, what it would sound like is it would go to that private 501c within the community. So then it would fall back on you folks to do and to play those roles and to have that responsibility. But from what Peter spoke at the PCA meeting, is what it would do is mandate that connection. So that's something that I'm going to put that high on my list because that's the first that I've heard of it, and I'm very interested in finding a way that we can mandate connection.
Yeah, talk to Pete.
Yeah, that's huge.
I think he's actually talked to Margaret.
Yeah, we gotta get more. Right, but Pete knows. Yeah, but Pete knows about 32. He read so much about it. He's up on it.
I have a 2-page letter from Perez that she sent.
Okay, so I think that's good. If nobody else has any more questions, we'll go ahead and end the webinar. And here is my contact information. If anybody has questions later on, you can call me on my phone. My email below is our Puako website. You will find our support survey on there. You will find a couple other surveys and a whole bunch of information, as well as links to these webinars. But if you want to go back and listen or watch again, you're welcome to do that.
Thanks, everyone.